hot flashes are something I'm sure you've heard of. So I use the term vasomotor symptoms. I think it's really important not to use slang when we
Mm.
talk about women's health. We don't use slang when we talk about men's health. And so vasomotor symptoms, whether you experience them or not, because not every woman does, but if you do, you have to pivot from, oh, this is a nuisance. I'm sweating, I'm hot, my life is interrupted, to this is a check engine light.
Mm.
What happens when the check engine light comes on in your car? You pull over to the side of the road, you lift the hood, you fix what's causing it. The exact same thing. Vasomotor symptoms means that estrogen and progesterone have declined. That means that your cholesterol is likely going to go up, that your blood pressure could get higher. What's the number one premature killer of women? Heart disease. Stop right now, pull over to the side of the road and learn how you can invest in your heart health, as an example.
Were you too young to know you were a girl or a boy?
Oh, I hated the skin that I was in. I thought I was ugly. I thought I was unlovable. I couldn't leave my house without people staring at me or making rude remarks.
There's a sense, I think, or a message that many of us have received that it's okay to be a Jew as long as you're the right kind of Jew.
Just imagine what it would be like for you when you get out of prison after, 10 years in there for something you didn't do.
Approximately 6 or 7 policemen attacked me and put in my pocket a big quantity of drugs.
If we can choose how we live well, then do we not have the right to choose how we die well? And how do we do that with dignity?
There's never a moment where I am not in pain. It's exhausting. Is the bottom line, is what it is.
I was born with a congenital difference. My arm, I have my elbow, but it was like underdeveloped from here out.
54% of those with disabilities are not working. If you're an employer, hire somebody with a disability. You won't regret it.
I've learned that us neurotypical people are the people who really need to learn from neurodiverse individuals. We are the aliens of this planet.
Welcome to Purposeful Empathy, a show that is dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. This season will inspire you to empathize with people who are regularly marginalized and misunderstood. You won't want to miss a single episode, so hit the subscribe button now. Thanks for watching and enjoy the show. Welcome. Today on Purposeful Empathy, I'm joined by Shirley Weir, one of Canada's most trusted voices in women's health and the founder of Menopause Chicks, an online community with more than 60,000 members dedicated to helping women navigate their midlife transition. In this conversation, we talk about the difference between perimenopause and menopause and the defining feature of both. Here's a hint, they're both totally unpredictable. Shirley explains why vasomotor symptoms aren't just hot flashes. Instead, they're a check engine light that women should not ignore. We talk about the staggering cost of menopause to organizations that don't have a plan. And we talk about how friends and colleagues, partners, and other family members can be more empathic to women as they navigate perimenopause and menopause. Shirley is clear about one thing, and that is that menopause isn't a medical condition or a one-way ticket to decline. She believes women in society at large need to reframe menopause as an invitation for women to invest in their health and quality of life for the decades ahead. So, if you've ever felt dismissed or confused or alone or pessimistic that your best days are behind you, this show is for you. And you should pass it on. Welcome to the show, Shirley.
Hi, thank you. Nice to meet you.
I am thrilled. I'll start this conversation by saying I'm in menopause. It's been 10 years, but I have many friends that are sort of going through the transition. And as a result of all the conversations that we've been having, there's just such a need to break this open publicly so that the world understands what's going on. So I'm so delighted to have this conversation with you. So much to explore. But before we do that, I'd love to get to know you a little bit better for our viewers and our listeners, just to sort of get a sense of who you are and what brought you to this point.
Oh my goodness. Well, I am just about to turn 59. I reached menopause when I was 49, and I have been doing this work for 13 years, but never imagined that this would be where I am sitting with you at the tail end of my 58th year. I 13 years ago, everyone was blogging, and I saw this, huge gap in the online space for lack of quality information and just really lack of clarity. Like, no place for me who had, I'm busy, but I'm also like educated and informed and proactive with my health. At least I thought I was. And then I went online and I was like, I don't know, all I'm getting was pop-up ads for, how to lose belly fat. And it was annoying. But it was also like, oh, maybe this will be, like my mission, like my personal calling. I'll write a blog off the end of my desk while I, carry out the rest of my life. Well, the universe had some different plans because when I launched that blog, I got just a ton of great feedback from friends and family and from media and from women like you, like me, who were starting to lean into the curiosity of menopause and wanting to learn and put their own name at the top of the to-do list. So here I am.
Well, I am grateful that you've been doing that work, and I'm so excited. So I think at the onset, I want to just share to the listeners and viewers, if you're new to this conversation, you're going to get so much out of it. If you are well on your way, learning more, you're going to learn more. And if you are a
Yes.
family member or in
Yes.
the workplace with people who are
Yes.
going through menopause, you're going to benefit from this conversation. So off to the
Absolutely.
races. Yeah. I guess I'll start with that. Perimenopause often feels invisible to women, right? That's what they say, until it impacts like every part of their life, really. So, just to get the conversation started, I wonder if you could just share how that invisibility can or does show up in women's lives. So, like, what's that on-ramp?
Sure. Well, okay, so let's define perimenopause first of all, because it's fairly new as a term. It was only coined in 1996. I don't know about you, but 96 feels like last week to me. And so peri, the prefix, means around. So the term is used to define around menopause. Menopause is the end of ovulation. Perimenopause is that phase of life where our body is preparing for the end of ovulation. It is not a synonym for suffering. And while 20% of women do have their worlds rocked upside down, many women sail through. It's like, oh, I didn't notice anything. I didn't have any, changes to my period. My sleep was fine. My mood was fine. Maybe in their last year before they stop ovulating, they might notice some changes, but it's very nuanced. It's very unpredictable. If there's one word to describe perimenopause, it's its unpredictability. And I think that that is probably because, you and I can hone in on ovarian function and we can say, oh, progesterone has started to decline. Ovaries are preparing for their last day on the job kind of thing. But there's a Rubik's Cube of life that every woman can relate to. She's juggling family responsibilities, taking care of people older and younger. She's maybe, been in a relationship. Maybe she's starting a new relationship. Maybe she's on her own. Maybe they're changing careers, starting businesses, running for government, running marathons. Like there's all these things. And if your experiences with bleeding, with mood and sleep are being, have other adjacent health experiences. Like maybe you have a chronic health condition, or maybe you're dealing with grief, or maybe you're navigating a divorce or, children. Like there's so much that it is very difficult to pinpoint, oh, here's the direct line from where you are now to, well, we'll solve that for you this afternoon, Anita. It takes some parsing out. And I don't know about you, but I've never solved a Rubik's Cube.
No, I had
I
a
think,
dollar bet with my dad back in the day, and I got into trouble because I actually peeled the
oh,
cards off.
well, I think somebody probably showed me how to get one side solved of the Rubik's Cube, and I actually use that analogy. I should have one here on my desk. But it's that feeling of when you solve one side of the Rubik's Cube. Maybe it's solving for sleep, or maybe you had heavy bleeding, but you took the steps to solve that. And then that feeling of when you turn the Rubik's Cube around and you're like, oh, but it's all messed up on the others. Like I still have work to do. And that is kind of the analogy, or the way that women share their stories with me.
Okay, so I get the fact that you're saying perimenopause is unpredictable and maybe 20% have some certain symptoms that you can point to as perimenopausal, but then menopause kicks in. I still feel like there might be some important symptoms that, a friend of mine was complaining for a long time that she just doesn't have the same amount of energy. And, I was maybe 10 years or 8 years ahead of her. And I was like, I'm sure that's perimenopause talking, right? No, not even necessarily.
Well, I'm not sure that it is. So here's a little mini masterclass. When our cycles are regular, so in our reproductive years, estrogen kind of shows up very consistently. It's kind of like an even Steven line throughout our reproductive years from maybe age 12 to age 51, let's say. And we can count on estrogen being that hormone that's produced in the first half of our cycle when cycles are regular. And progesterone doesn't look so like across the board. It looks more like a hill. So you're 12 and it's low, and we start producing progesterone in the second half of our cycle. And then we peak. And then it starts to decline probably in our late 30s, early 40s into our early 50s. When progesterone starts that decline, women most commonly notice changes to mood, changes to sleep, and changes to bleeding. Now, there are a lot of things, especially on the internet, that get tossed into a menopause bucket and get labeled menopause. Low energy might be one of them. Could it be hormone related? Possibly. I would never be able to say for sure, but I can say that if someone shows up and says, I have debilitating fatigue, exhaustion, I'm waking at 3 a.m. and I can't get back to sleep, that might not be related to progesterone. They might be iron deficient. They might have a thyroid condition. And so those are the two distinctions that whenever we're talking about adverse health experiences, I like to say this is related to hormones. So this is related to estrogen or progesterone decline. And then these are some things that are adjacent, and we want to make sure that we address both, because you deserve to feel amazing. But there's often a disconnect if we call it menopause and it's not, it's iron deficiency, then we're missing an opportunity to point her in the right direction to getting treatment for that.
Which is why, women's health is distinct from men's health. And we have to stop using men as the baseline to understand all aspects of life, right? What do you want to say to that?
100%. 100%. Yeah. So, it's been so we've been so misled, and even we do it to ourselves in the menopause space, because we're like, oh, somebody once upon a time instilled in me that it's just part of being a woman. Is it? Is suffering just part of being a woman? I don't believe it is. I believe that if we have the right information, more podcasts like yours, more people listening and saying, I'm going to think about this differently from now on. This is not my mother or my grandmother, even though they may have told me that it's just part of being a woman to have heavy bleeding. And it's like, if you're bleeding heavily, you will be iron deficient. You're probably going to be fatigued. That's one scenario. I'm not saying that's your friend's experience at all, but that's one possible, very common scenario.
Yeah, beautiful. It's so great to talk to an expert who is really helping us all come along this journey of breaking down some barriers to understanding and finding our own agency in this process.
Yes, I love that word.
Okay, so you've written a third book that'll be coming out in the summer of 2026. So we'll have
Yes.
the show notes to get to the book when that comes out. But what's the
Okay.
title or working title?
It's called The Unexpected Joy of Menopause.
Oh, love the reframe, the unexpected joy. Okay. And
Yeah.
you've written this book because you believe women's health and menopause care deserves the most current evidence-based information. So, because it's your second book and you've been in this space, like you said, 13 years, what new insights are you excited to share and maybe uplift at the beginning of this?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that. It's really about the reframe. So I, I'm a Pollyanna, and I sometimes hesitate to publicly say the phrase the joy of menopause. But here's the thing that I want you to lean into if you'll just give me a second. And that is, we're the first generation of women to turn 50 and have 50 quality years ahead of us,
Mm.
not 20, right? Not, oh, I'm almost 70 and then my health will decline and I will be living with heart disease, osteoporosis, dementia, and incontinence. That's not our generation. We're planning for the next half century of our life.
Mm.
And so I don't want to plan without a little bit of joy sprinkled in there. Thank you very much. And so, yes, I do kind of get nerdy about the hormones and the words and how we articulate and how I help women solve their path. But I also like to really celebrate age and doing those things like we spoke about. Like, I speak with women every single day who are like, I've been working in government, Shirley, for 35 years. I really want to be a florist. And I'm like, okay, right? Go be a florist. If that, like, you're 55, you're 59, whatever, you're 72, go be a florist. And it's changing that conversation that we often have with the person staring back at us in the mirror.
Well, the gift of that reframe of another 50 years to look forward to makes me happy because I don't have nearly enough saved for my retirement. So
Yeah, me too.
work a long time, so I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Okay.
That's an excellent parallel, though, because your listeners have probably all, at some point in their conversation, in their lives, had important conversations about how are we going to save for post-secondary education if you have kids, or how am we going to save for retirement, or are we going to draw out equity from our house so that we can X, Y, and Z pursue our dreams? We have to have the exact same type of conversations about our health.
So the idea is looking at menopause as a moment in a woman's life that doesn't have to be the decline from something. It actually
Right.
is like, let's look forward to something too, right? Yeah. Beautiful.
Totally. And like hot flashes are something I'm sure you've heard of. So I use the term vasomotor symptoms. I think it's really important not to use slang when we
Mm.
talk about women's health. We don't use slang when we talk about men's health. And so vasomotor symptoms, whether you experience them or not, because not every woman does, but if you do, you have to pivot from, oh, this is a nuisance. I'm sweating, I'm hot, my life is interrupted, to this is a check engine light.
Mm.
What happens when the check engine light comes on in your car? You pull over to the side of the road, you lift the hood, you fix what's causing it. The exact same thing. Vasomotor symptoms means that estrogen and progesterone have declined. That means that your cholesterol is likely going to go up, that your blood pressure could get higher. What's the number one premature killer of women? Heart disease. Stop right now, pull over to the side of the road and learn how you can invest in your heart health, as an example.
So, okay, I had other questions planned, but let me just start here then by asking.
Sorry, I
No,
hijacked.
it's great. It's great because, I know there was some controversy over hormone replacement therapy, that it was linked to breast
Sure.
cancer, and that's been debunked. And
It's not.
Oh, it's not debunked.
No, it's not linked to any cancer.
It's not linked to any cancer. Yeah, okay, phew. And I am a user of bioidentical hormones. I know others who have done it. And I pushed hard because my symptoms were severe and I wanted to manage and get beyond it and have a happier life. I wonder if you could walk us through what it's like if women are sensing changes in their bodies and they're having a conversation with their physician whether it's a male physician or a female physician, and the physician's not taking some of their questions or comments or symptoms seriously, like what would you encourage?
Yeah, so we're really at a bit of a crossroads in this movement in regards to that example that you've just articulated. And what I mean by the crossroads is we do have a 23 history, recent history of a lot of misinterpretation of information around menopause hormone therapy and the risks. What we've been missing in these past 20 or so years is the interpretation, the proper interpretation around the benefits. So 10 years ago, you may have sat down with your physician and had a conversation, and that physician might have said, risks are too high, you're going to get a stroke, I'm not prescribing you menopause hormone therapy. And you're sitting there like, I have no quality of life. I have hot flashes that are causing me to, like, I can't work. I'm, not able to care for my aging parents or for my children. Like, your quality of life is so low, and you walk out without an answer. Fast forward, we're now having this conversation in Canada in 2026. The Canadian Medical Association came out 3 years ago and made sure that all their members, so your doctor, your nurse practitioner, has gotten the memo that menopause hormone therapy is the first line recommendation. So in medicine, first line means that if someone shows up with A, B, and C, and there are no contraindications, then menopause hormone therapy is the most appropriate treatment. Exactly the same line of thinking if you showed up at your doctor's today with diabetes. The first line treatment is diabetes medication or insulin, right? If you showed up with a thyroid condition, the first line recommendation is thyroid treatment. So menopause hormone therapy is approved for the treatment of vasomotor symptoms, the prevention of bone loss. So we start to lose bone density at menopause because progesterone and estrogen are both responsible for bone. And we want to prevent osteoporosis. We want to prevent you probably heard, I'm getting on a bit of a tangent, but you probably heard of like grandma fell and broke her hip.
Yeah.
Right? Most hip fractures happen because the hip broke and then grandma fell.
Oh.
That's what is happening to our bones as we lose density, as we no longer have those hormones that we relied so heavily on during our reproductive years. Now, there are many ways to protect your bone health. Menopause hormone therapy is approved for preventing the bone loss, but you also want to lift weights, practice yoga or balance exercise, check your nutrition, and quit smoking. Obviously, I should have said that one first. And then menopause hormone therapy is also approved for symptoms related to our genitourinary health. So making sure that the vulva and the vagina stay healthy, not just for sexual activity, but to sit comfortably, to go to yoga, to ride your bike, to go to dance class, to be able to do all of those things and to prevent reoccurring UTIs, which I now in hindsight believe is what killed my mother.
Oh, wow.
Undiagnosed chronic dryness, UTIs, no treatment given. Yeah, I mean, I can't prove it, but that's definitely her story.
Her story. As you were talking about bone density, one thing that flashed through my mind, and this also could be tangential, but there's a lot of weight loss meds that are, they were designed for diabetes, but now they're being used as this super drug. Is there anything in the menopause conversation, like in that Venn diagram, that you could add to that?
There's definitely some conversations happening, and there's definitely some research that's happening. I would say that those GLP-1s or related treatments that a lot of people are interested in are, first of all, excellent at treating diabetes if you have diabetes, and excellent at treating obesity. And that's probably another podcast. But recognizing obesity as a condition is super important, because obesity is it's a check engine light for breast cancer, and so many other chronic health conditions that we have an opportunity now to prevent.
Okay, so there's no research that you know of that's saying if you're menopausal, taking this is not a good idea. Okay. But what
I
about
wouldn't be prepared. I wouldn't be prepared to speak on that. And I think it's very early days in 2026, but I know that you and I will be alive long enough to probably see the outcome of what those experiences and studies look like.
Okay, so if we're on the weight loss conversation, middle that
Mhm.
middle changes. So what would you like to say about all of that?
Yeah, so I have a sort of a weight management policy in the Menopause Chicks community. And I'll try to remember if everything that I include on it. But the Menopause Chicks community is hosted on Facebook. It's a private online group on Facebook. We have 60,000 members. It's highly engaged, and there's only one topic that I won't respond to, and that is weight management. First of all, it's Facebook, so do not take any weight advice from Facebook or the online space. It's very individual. Go to have an informed conversation with your health team. And the second part is sort of that balancing of I want to be body positive. I want every woman listening to us to, just because we have a lot of noise about GLP-1s right now, I want every woman listening to be like, I can be healthy in the body that I have. And I want to weigh that with the fact that there are some risk factors. You do have to sit down and have an informed conversation about what your elevated risk for heart disease or types of cancers might be if you have obesity or if you are overweight. So it's really difficult to have a universal conversation about weight management when it's so individual.
Right. But is there just some general like scientific or physiological evidence about, given our hormonal fluctuations that does change sort of an hourglass to a different shape? Like is there validity to that or
I can give you a couple of truth bombs or insights into that. One is the fact that estrogen, which the hormone that's produced when our cycles are regular and helps develop an egg follicle, it is an appetite suppressant, actually. So as estrogen fluctuates or declines in perimenopause to postmenopause, you might notice some changes in appetite. And what was the second thing I was going to say? Weight around the middle can definitely be related to hormone changes. It can also be related to cortisol. And cortisol is our stress hormone. So changes in stress, which again brings us back to those things that overlap, like the Rubik's Cube. And then the big overlap there is, and I hate to be the one that has to say this, but it's being honest with ourselves about lifestyle. So you might have been an athlete, but are you still exercising? Or you might I like to eat healthy, but in my 40s and like when I was just launching Menopause Chicks and doing my research, was I actually taking care of myself? I was not. I was burning the candle at both ends. My aging mother was living with us. She was showing signs of dementia. I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and working for 4 hours before my children woke up. I was participating in some extreme, insane behavior, and all of my good eating habits fell by the wayside.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we're as women in the sandwich generation, we're also being stretched all over the place and still believing that we got to be super women and get it all done, right? So that
And then, of course,
cortisol
if you're
thing.
not sleeping, you're eating and your exercise just goes out the window. So we say eat, move, and sleep, but we should be saying sleep, eat, and move.
Say that again, Shirley.
Sleep has to be number one. It has to be number one. If we can solve for sleep and do nothing else, it puts us in the driver's seat of our health decisions. Then we can actually truly function.
Amazing. Okay, so you mentioned Menopause Chicks. I'm going to
Yes.
now embed the 2-minute video that's on your website so everybody can see how empowering it is. And in the show notes will be the link to the Facebook page. So
Okay.
here we go.
I am a midlife woman and I hold up the world. We are 50% of the population.
We influence over 90% of all consumer and health decisions.
Yet media try and tell us we're over the hill.
Marketers trying to convince us
we need fixing.
We often leave medical appointments feeling dismissed and disappointed.
Grin and bear it, they say.
You're getting older, they say.
It's just part of being a woman, they say.
What?
Really, is it?
We all have questions about our health. We all have choices, and one of them is not suffering in silence. 62% of us lack the time to do the research. 31% of us don't trust online information. 35% of us don't trust our physicians. And 70% of us don't have anyone to talk to when it comes to perimenopause or menopause. It was that last statistic that made me think talking about menopause would be the answer as we ask women,
hey, are you okay? Conversations don't work if they continue to spread myths and misinformation. Navigating perimenopause is confusing
and overwhelming and expensive.
This is about us.
This isn't just about us.
If we truly want to hand our daughters a better way,
talking about menopause is not enough. We have to change the narrative.
We have to move the menopause conversation from black and white
to full color.
Let's say goodbye to old, tired, bitchy, and fat.
And an era where our hormone needs aren't met. And hello to confidence,
wisdom,
beauty,
unapologetic resilience,
and a new model for women's midlife health.
We are not hot.
We are fireproof. This is Menopause Reimagined.
This is Midlife Reimagined.
All right, welcome back. Let me ask another question. Perimenopause and menopause can affect mood, sleep, libido, memory. We talked about energy a bit and confidence. And I think there are people who are living or working with someone in transition, like either in perimenopause or menopause itself, may want to be supportive, but aren't sure how. So I wonder if you could speak to some of the maybe well-intentioned responses that missed the mark and some genuinely helpful and supportive.
Sure. So let me begin by saying that I do a lot of workplace education. I get asked by employers or health groups, women's groups to speak to them. And it really is the same education that individuals can get from the Menopause Chicks community, because everyone right now is just craving how does this work? What are the definitions? What's true? What's valid? So it's that interpretation, sorting it all out. However, in the workplace is like the best health classroom that we have right now, because it's an opportunity to get this information, important health information, to all ages, all genders, and all levels of the organization, right? This isn't like, a management retreat. This is for everyone. And I love that about workplace education. A couple of things that I don't love about menopause in the workplace dialogue or conversations is I just worry so much that it will further stigmatize women in the workplace. I do not want certain people who don't yet have the memo that we're talking about today to think of women as a liability. Mm. And we have worked really hard to overcome that when it comes to pregnancy and parenthood. But now we're introducing this perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause conversation to the workplace, and we're introducing it in a way to get attention, and that is working. So, like, kudos to all of the people who've done the research, the economic impact. Those numbers are startling and they're real and they're impactful. But I don't yet know how they're landing with decision makers. And that worries me. The third thing I would say that worries me about talking about menopause in the workplace is that very quickly the images often go to office workers, the traditional office workspace. The reality is, you and I are both in Canada. The reality is for Canadian women, most of their the occupations that attract women the most are education, healthcare, and caregiving for children or elders. When we see some of the workplace education, not mine, but when we see some of the dialogue that's like, oh, make sure you get your uniform changed, or make sure, like, if you are in a classroom with 26-year-olds and you're bleeding heavily, you don't have the option to just go to the bathroom whenever you want. Like, there's some occupational barriers to the majority of women who are, navigating some real changes. So we have all of that to say, I love what's happening. We're at the very beginning and we have a long road ahead of us.
Okay, so this really good segue to this white paper that's on your website that I downloaded. So to set up the question, perimenopause often unfolds during the peak career years. Okay, so if we are talking sort of, let's say at least a lion's share of people that we're talking about now are office workers, but even though you just said that there's also other women in other parts of the workforce, but it's often unspoken at work, right? Your website has some interesting stats about menopause. You were just earlier alluding to the fact that we don't want women to be seen as a liability, and yet, there's some stats that say unmet menopause-related health concerns, 3.5 billion a year, sleep disorders, 5,000 per employee per year, missed work due to mental illness, $51 billion a year. So there's like this is a very expensive situation that's playing out. So what do you wish leaders and colleagues understood about how this transition can affect women's capacity, not their competence, and how workplace culture can either support or silence them? And the last thing I'll say, because I talked about this white paper that you worked on called Let's Talk Menopause at Work. In it, you highlighted 5 reasons that women tend to leave their job during menopause. And one that caught my attention was workplace culture overlooks midlife women's health in employee benefits. So, like, what should leaders and organizations be doing differently?
Okay, so to your first question, I think that if workplace leaders could prioritize sleep, we already talked about this, for all their employees, their suppliers, and their customers, we could change the world. And what I mean by that is, first of all, you mentioned like a lot of perimenopause and menopause experiences might be silent at work. It is so true. I can work with an employee group who are more willing to talk about sexual desire and bleeding in a workplace setting than they are to show up and admit that they are not sleeping well while their boss is sitting in the next room or the next chair, because they do not want to be judged. And so 1 in 11 Canadians live with chronic insomnia disorder. That means when you're driving home tonight, every 11th car coming at you is somebody who, has insomnia. In the Menopause Chicks community, it's 70% of women aged 45 to 64 meet the criteria for insomnia. If you're a leader listening to this, get some sleep health education into your workplace. And to your second question, marry that with sleep benefits, whether that's, cognitive behavior therapy, which is a first line recommendation, or advocating to make sure that the sleep supports that your employees need are available to them.
So why are women struggling with sleep in menopause?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I asked it too. I just finished the second round of a sleep survey with Menopause Chicks. So 1 in 11 Canadians, 70% of Menopause Chicks. So I asked the question, what is standing in your way between where you are now, insomnia, and successful sleep? Thinking that the answer I was going to get was, oh, I went to my doctor and I was dismissed, or I was told, whatever. It wasn't. 60% of them said, I have to get over the fact that this is something I should be able to solve on my own.
Mm.
And that blew my mind because it drove home the fact that women are shooting on themselves, thinking that sleep is something that's on the back burner, that they should be able to figure out on their own. Meanwhile, they're living with the impact and the implications and the next day consequences and the inability to do their job the way they used to, and the decline in confidence because of that, and the inability to carry out other responsibilities at home and in the community because they're not sleeping.
It feels to me like we're in the early stages of some massive research that's going to unfold in the next decade or so. And maybe AI will be helpful, maybe to crunch some numbers faster. I don't know, but
I think we will. I think you're absolutely right. I think we're going to see some massive learning from research, and particularly, like if I could just draw a link right now, and that is the impact of not sleeping. What does it have on our future heart and brain health?
Mm.
And then we look at the statistics for heart disease and dementia, especially in women, because dementia impacts, I think, three times more women than men. So this is huge.
And then, so lately I've been paying attention to the dementia conversation too, and there's now a big link with the microbiome. Have you been following that at all? No? Okay, so
not really my wheelhouse. Yeah.
But my sense is that there's a growing research between the gut and the brain axis research, and so maybe that's also going to show up in this literature. Anyways, okay.
Well, I can tell you there's a big link between estrogen and brain health.
Really?
So we have estrogen and progesterone receptors everywhere in our body. And so often the narrative is that estrogen is all about developing that egg and that it's all related to ovaries. But the truth is, when our ovaries produce estrogen in the first 2 weeks of our cycle, it supports our brain health, our heart health. It supports our genital urinary health. It supports dryness. So not just skin and vaginal dryness, but the mouth, the eyes, keeps everything juicy.
My God, I just had this idea that if if the world was organized according to women's menstrual cycles, the first 2 weeks we would be working hard, and then we would be sort of working less the next 2 weeks.
It's exactly, you just described what I talk about in my masterclass. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So estrogen is really feisty. It's the strongest hormone, and it has to be because it's taking an egg follicle and developing it into an egg and then releasing it. This is like, we've kind of ignored a lot of the bare bones biology in women's health, right? We talk about how to get pregnant and how not to get pregnant, but we often forget like what happens before.
Which is basically like what I'm hearing now again, and this is kind of blowing my mind, is the first half of our cycle, we are preparing our body to create life.
Yes.
So like all of it has to work optimally. And then we got to sort of like take a break and catch up for the next month if it didn't happen.
Which is why progesterone is so important. So progesterone comes along in the second half of our cycle. It's the perfect dance partner to estrogen's feistiness. The two hormones work in synchronicity to give you the whole cycle. But progesterone's job is to say, wow, Anita, you worked really hard those last 2 weeks. I'm here to give you some calm. I'm going to support your mood. I'm going to support your sleep, and I'm going to support your bleeding. And while that is happening, I'm going to protect the lining of your uterus.
Okay, I know that there's women listening right now that are having the same like exploding exclamation marks and okay, I got to share this with my friend and call. Did you know about this? It's fascinating.
Well, when we understand the roles and responsibilities of our hormones, it's proven tens of thousands of conversations that I've had that then that's when confidence enters the conversation. So if you understand that estrogen is responsible for this and progesterone is responsible for this, you can confidently step into the driver's seat of your health. You can confidently walk into your doctor's office and have that conversation. There's less of a power dynamic in that conversation. You'll be going in and saying, "Oh, I understand this. Now will you work with me to help sort out, what my options are?" But most of my members go in knowing what their options are and ask their healthcare provider to, weigh the benefits or the risks of two options, and then they feel really good and getting
Right.
on with the rest of their lives.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about these two important hormones, but there's a third niggling at me. And so I guess it's related to this conversation. You tell me if I'm wrong. So intimacy and emotional closeness can shift during perimenopause, and that can be a really tender territory, not just for couples, also family dynamics as a whole. So I just wonder if we could talk a little bit about libido and sex and navigating that whole terrain and what role testosterone might play there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. We left testosterone off of the previous conversation. That's not because it's not an important hormone. Women and our ovaries produce testosterone as well. It's often thought of as a male hormone, and it's often referred to as a sex hormone. But testosterone is, while it's related to sexual desire, it's also related to confidence. And so if you like, I often think about my mother and when I talk about testosterone, because as an older woman, after my father passed away, my mom's confidence tanked. She no longer wanted to do the things that she used to do, and she was not confident banking or opening the mail or like and I was like, oh, in hindsight, I'm like, oh, and that was probably related to a decline in testosterone too. It's not just aging. It's not just you're old. It's actually like has a root cause. Testosterone plays many roles. It doesn't get talked about enough in the menopause conversation, probably because in North America, we do not yet have an approved testosterone therapy for women. So if you're male, you can get testosterone hormone therapy. If you're female, you can still get it, but it would be prescribed by a doctor in an off-label format. So again, we're in a bit of a crossroads. You and I will be alive long enough to see testosterone therapy approved for women in North America. I'm sure of it. And when it comes to sexual desire, you may be tired of this answer already, but it can be very nuanced. So there's one of my colleagues, Dr. Lori Brotto, who works here at University of British Columbia and the Women's Health Research Institute. She's done a ton of research on the impact of stress on sexual desire. And if I could flip that from a problem to a solution point of view, the positive impact of mindfulness on sexual desire. And I like that blew me away, right? Because, and especially sexual desire in women, it's not an on-off light switch. So we're, Mars and Venus, we're built very differently than men. So it's really important that we study women's health, whole health, not just the hormone shifts and changes that might be happening, and what role does testosterone play? What role does bleeding play? What role does the time of the month play? Yeah, all those are factors, but also the mindfulness practices and maybe the meditation that we can put in our toolkit to help with that.
Right. I'm just also starting to formulate this idea, which probably circles back to this book and the secret joy of menopause, right? Which
Yeah.
is, exactly at the moment that this transition's happening is when a woman's full, like she's carrying career, children, parents aging, mortgage payments, a partner that's been maybe in her life or not in her life for however many years. And all of it's happening simultaneously. So what can you point to that is actually about hormonal changes or transitioning to menopause and just the fact that you're a busy life and stressed a lot and not getting enough of the right nutrients or not getting enough sleep, like you said. So I almost feel like this moment of menopause can give you 64,000 feet to look at your life holistically and say, I need to make some changes that are going to support me as a human being to flourish at my most optimal. And this just little thing that happened to me happens to be a good excuse to do that.
I think you just described me, Anita. Honestly. I did reach menopause when I was 49. I had my children when I was 33 and 36. So they're still in the house, but there's that freedom, that level of responsibility that gets shifted towards you when you, as a parent, for example, you're no longer trying to keep them alive, and you're still actively parenting, but you can put your own desires further up the list. And yeah, that's what happened.
Okay, so I doubt that we're going to have children listening to this YouTube podcast. And if you are, kudos. But
Yeah.
let's imagine this is the most shareable moment to the partners, okay? The nice spouses or partners in our lives. What do you want to whisper to them that would be helpful for them to be supportive to their women partners experiencing menopause?
Yeah, I love that question as well. I have found that a lot of my male friends and my partner, they're very if X, then Y type people. Lift the hood, fix what's going on with the engine. Let's try this, let's try that. I think that menopause being under, a tent or an umbrella of misunderstanding, if we continue to perpetuate that, our partners are going to be left in the dark, or our male friends are going to be left in the dark, or our work colleagues are going to be left in the dark. If we can bring some of what you and I discussed today out into the forefront and just say, like, this is not taboo. It's just, this is how we all got here. You got here this way. The egg, the signal was sent from your mother's brain to her ovaries. The egg follicle was developed. It traveled down the fallopian tube and met your dad's sperm, and that's how you got here today. Let's unpack it and understand that if X then Y scenario, and just keep it really real.
Yeah.
Sometimes people would ask me, are you going to write a book for men? And I'm like, oh, I did. Like, just read this. You don't need different language. Just read this one.
Fair enough, because both people should know, right? Everybody should know. This should be like, out in the open, as common.
For sure. And that's, I know I kind of mentioned about I'm a word nerd, and I'm like, I want us to say vasomotor symptoms. I don't want us to say hot flashes or night sweats. And the flip side of that, although they're completely different experiences, is that if you and I were having a conversation about erectile dysfunction, we would say erectile dysfunction. We wouldn't use slang. Right?
We're trying to conjure up what this slang would even sound like, but you're right.
Well,
You're
I know. I
absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Limp Dick the musical.
Yeah.
No, I mean, if my partner was experiencing erectile dysfunction and that was affecting his quality of life, I would want him to go into his health appointment feeling confident and informed and walk out with a treatment that met his values and his life goals. That's all that we want for women too.
Hear, hear. Okay, so I have two questions left, Shirley. One of them is going to be sort of more of a philosophical question, and then my usual purposeful empathy. But I want to be sure, since you may have done these podcasts or you may do training sessions, is there anything we haven't talked about that you would really like to uplift right now?
I would love to say that menopause is an invitation to invest in our health. And I think that if we can redefine or pivot our thinking towards that, then it moves it away from being a medical condition, which it's not, puberty is not a medical condition, neither is menopause. It's just a point on the calendar, but understanding our window of opportunity to invest is key. And we will thank ourselves in 30 or 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, and I wish you untold success with the book. Again, we're going to have the link in the show notes so people can pick that up.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so penultimate question here. The transition that unfolds in the middle of an already full life, careers, parenting, aging parents, all of that we know. How can we help society think of this transition as part of a larger system rather than locating the problem in the person?
I wanted to have just the most amazing response to this question, and I'm not sure that I do. And that is because in the work that I do, I think I very quickly move into fix it mode. And not because I want to diminish someone's experiences, because I know how important it is to validate someone, to remind them that I see you, you are not alone. I want you to be confident that you have the smarts and the savviness to figure this out. Because if I can figure it out, I know that you can figure it out. But there's so many layers to women's health, feminist movements, narratives, stories that we've been told, dismissal and disappointment, that the pie is so big. And when someone comes to me and says, I went to my doctor and I was dismissed, I was told that everyone experiences heavy bleeding and I should just suck it up for another year and come back then, right? Or whatever they're saying. I think I quickly skip over the let me validate your experience. Remind you that you're not alone. And I'm like, that's unacceptable. And I can see the path to solving that for you, because my North Star is that you deserve to feel amazing. And I've been saying that phrase for 13 years. And I always kind of underline the word amazing whenever I write it on a post-it note or whatever. And just a few months ago, I realized I'm underlining the wrong word. The word that needs to be emphasized is deserve.
I have goosebumps.
I need to convince every single woman that she deserves to feel amazing.
You were looking for the perfect answer. That was like 3 bases loaded, home run, even though I don't even like baseball. Okay. Shirley, last question before we say goodbye. And thank you for finding an hour in your day to
I can't believe the time went so quickly.
Chat. Yeah, unbelievable. Because it's a podcast related to empathy, I've been getting into the habit for the last couple of years of asking the guests if they can tell me a time in their life when they were on the receiving end of empathy. Could happen last week, could have happened 20 years ago. I never know what to expect, but what the story was and how it made you feel.
Whew. I have been honest. I was on a speaking tour in the fall, and I realized the power of sharing personal stories. And a lot of people had asked me about my own personal journey. My personal journey with perimenopause, I find it quite boring, to be honest. It's not really, I just got tired of telling it. But when I put up stories of my daughter, who's 22, my sister, who is my best friend, and my mother, who is no longer with us, it created lineups afterwards of people coming up and like saying, me too, me too. And in particular, my mother passed away in 2008 and she was 80. So she did have me when she was 40. And my kids were really little when she passed away. And I don't think I took the time that I needed in those years to experience the grief. And it's the empathy feels like it's coming my way now in the form of healing. And I don't know, it's just been a really profound moment where I've like been able to connect all of these dots. Yes, there's always people when someone you love passes away, there's always people on your doorstep with flowers and casseroles and things to remind you that you're not alone and that you're part of a larger community. But to experience it nearly 20 years later is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And I'm so grateful that for whatever reason, I've chosen to continue to tell her story and to be on the receiving end of that undescribable love from people.
Thank you for sharing that. Would you tell us about your mom?
Sure. So I was born into a lot of grief. My parents had, before I was born, my parents had two sons who passed away, both at 18 months of 18 months. And in between there was my sister. And then 8 years later, after my brother Ross passed away, I was born. So there's a 10-year gap between me and my sister. And in addition to my brother's dying, my sister had cancer when she was 6 years old. So my parents navigated a lot. And then I came along, and they were hoping that I was a girl because they were only told that they couldn't have boys. They didn't have any autopsies or they didn't know why the boys had died. And so my parents were just like cup half full people. They just like, I mean, they white knuckled their way through life and with a lot of strength and a lot of faith. And towards the end of my mom's life, she was diagnosed with dementia and put on medication to slow down the advancement of dementia. When she passed away, my sister and I ordered an autopsy. And when the coroner called us at the funeral home, he said, "Your mom showed no sign of brain decay or decline." And I don't know if you know or not, but dementia cannot be diagnosed until death, to be 100% certain. So anyone being treated for dementia, it's a bit of a guessing game. And so we kind of were like, in the middle of a funeral and didn't think about it too much. Fast forward, I start doing research on menopause. I finally, I did get my mom's medical records, which showed she suffered greatly from dryness, vaginal dryness, chronic UTIs, eye dryness, mouth dryness. They never knew how to treat her. And then I was like starting to connect the dots. And when estrogen declines, it impacts our genitourinary health. So the vulva, the vagina, the urethra. I have a vulva puppet here. And the urethra, which is where we pee from, gets shorter and smaller, which makes it more susceptible to UTIs, urinary tract infections. My mom had a history of urinary tract infections, but was never offered the preventative approach. It was always just a round of antibiotics. In older people, UTIs might not show up as the traditional symptoms of pain with urinating or frequency of urination or whatever. Sometimes it shows up as cognitive decline.
Oh, wow.
Memory loss. Yeah. And I remember she even said to my sister once, she just like, this was sort of near the end, but not quite. She's like, "Am I losing my mind? Because I don't feel that I am, but I understand why I'm being put into this path, this journey."
Wow.
And so I just do every thank you for asking, because at every opportunity I want you and I want your mother and your grandmother and your aunts and like older sisters, I want everyone to know that chronic UTIs are really common in older people. They might show up differently. They might show up as cognitive decline. You can pee on a stick and test. It's so easy to test if there's a UTI, and they're preventable in women. Vaginal estrogen is approved by the Canadian Urological Association for the prevention of UTIs.
Holy. Well, thank you for sharing all of that.
Thanks
And
for asking.
I feel, I mean, this is probably, you probably have heard this before, and I don't want to sound cliche at all, but it sounds like you're doing legacy work right now. I mean, you're doing such important work. Thank you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We deserve it, right?
We deserve to feel amazing.
Totally.
Shirley, thank you so much for everything. We'll have all sorts of links in the show notes. I want to thank everybody who's been watching and listening and now about to share this for the time you've spent with us today. And we'll see you next week at Purposeful Empathy. If you know someone who would benefit from this episode, please share it with them now. Post the link to your socials and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. The world needs more empathy, and you have an important role to play.